The last wish of an alien girl before euthanasia is to try the human reproduction method. The sun cast a warm glow over the bustling streets of the Verxian capital, its rays dancing off the sleek metallic surfaces of the towering skyscrapers. Amidst the throng of humanoid aliens going about their daily lives, Scylla stood out like a shimmering beacon, her silver skin and dark brown hair tied in a high ponytail catching the light as she walked with a spring in her step. Scylla inhaled deeply, savoring the sweet scent of blooming flowers that wafted from the carefully tended gardens lining the sidewalks. A smile played on her lips as she thought about the day ahead, filled with promise and potential. "Good morning, Scylla," a friendly voice called out, drawing her attention to an elderly alien sweeping the front steps of his shop. "Good morning, Mr. Xander," Scylla replied, waving enthusiastically. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" The old man chuckled, his wrinkled face crinkling with joy. "Indeed it is, my dear. Off to work, I presume?" Scylla nodded, her emerald eyes sparkling with excitement. "Yes, I've got a big project I'm working on at the university. I can't wait to see how it turns out." "Well, best of luck to you then," Mr. Xander said, giving her a thumbs up. "I'm sure you'll do great things as always." Scylla grinned, her heart swelling with pride. She loved her job as a researcher, delving into the mysteries of the universe and pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge. It was more than just a career to her. It was a calling, a way to make a difference in the world. As she continued her walk, Scylla's mind buzzed with ideas and possibilities. She mentally reviewed her to-do list, prioritizing tasks and planning out her day. There was so much to accomplish, but she was ready to tackle it all head-on. Lost in thought, Scylla almost didn't notice when she reached her favorite cafe. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, beckoning her inside. She pushed open the door, the tinkling of the bell above announcing her arrival. "Scylla, my favorite customer!" The barista, a cheerful young alien with bright blue skin, called out from behind the counter. "The usual, I presume." "You know me too well, Luca," Scylla laughed, approaching the counter. "A large Verxian latte with an extra shot of espresso, please." Luca nodded, his hands already moving to prepare her drink. "Coming right up." "You look like you're ready to take on the world today." Scylla leaned against the counter, watching as Luca worked his magic. "I feel like I am," she confided, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I've got this research project that I'm really excited about. If everything goes according to plan, it could revolutionize the way we understand quantum mechanics." Luca let out a low whistle, impressed. "Sounds like heavy stuff, but if anyone can crack it, it's you, Scylla. You've got the brains and the determination to make it happen." Scylla felt a blush creep onto her cheeks at the compliment. "Thanks, Luca. That means a lot." With her latte in hand, Scylla made her way to her usual corner booth, settling in and pulling out her data pad. She took a sip of the creamy, slightly sweet beverage, letting out a contented sigh as the warmth spread through her body. For the next hour, Scylla lost herself in her work, her fingers flying across the data pad as she reviewed notes, ran simulations, and jotted down new ideas. The world around her faded away, her focus entirely on the complex equations and theories that danced across the screen. It wasn't until a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her that Scylla was jolted back to reality. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the room continued to spin around her. Her hands shook as she reached for her latte, knocking it over and sending the contents spilling across the table. "Scylla, are you okay?" Luca's concerned voice sounded distant, muffled by the ringing in her ears. Scylla tried to stand to reassure him that she was fine, but her legs gave way beneath her. She crumpled to the floor, her body convulsing as a seizure took hold. Panic erupted in the cafe as patrons and staff alike rushed to her aid. Luca vaulted over the counter, his eyes wide with fear as he knelt beside her, trying to keep her head steady. "Someone call an ambulance," he shouted, his voice trembling. "Hang on, Scylla. Help is on the way." But Scylla couldn't respond, couldn't even hear him over the chaos in her own mind. Colors exploded behind her eyelids, and a searing pain ripped through her skull. She felt like she was being torn apart from the inside out. Her body no longer under her control. Time seemed to stretch and warp, seconds feeling like hours as Scylla lay there, helpless and afraid. She could hear the wail of sirens in the distance, growing louder and louder until they filled her ears, drowning out everything else. Strong hands lifted her onto a stretcher, strapping her down as they rushed her out of the cafe and into the waiting ambulance. The flashing lights and urgent voices of the paramedics blurred together. a kaleidoscope of sensations that Scylla couldn't make sense of. As the ambulance sped through the city streets, Scylla drifted in and out of consciousness, her thoughts fragmented and hazy. She caught snippets of conversation, words like critical condition and unknown cause floating through the air like ominous specters. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Scylla was whisked away into a flurry of activity. Doctors and nurses surrounded her, their faces masked with concern as they hooked her up to machines and ran countless tests. Scylla's family arrived soon after, their faces etched with worry and fear. Her mother, a regal-looking alien with silver hair and kind eyes, held her hand tightly, whispering words of comfort and love. "You're going to be okay, my darling," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "We're here for you, no matter what." But as the hours ticked by and the test came back, the news grew increasingly grim. The doctors gathered Scylla's family in a small, sterile room, their expressions somber as they delivered the diagnosis. "Scylla has a rare, incurable disease," the lead doctor explained, his voice heavy with regret. "It's a degenerative condition that will slowly rob her of her bodily functions and cognitive abilities." "I'm afraid there's no known cure." Scylla's mother let out a choked sob, her hand flying to her mouth. "How long does she have?" The doctor hesitated, his eyes filled with sympathy. "It's difficult to say. Some patients live for years with proper care and management. Others deteriorate more quickly. We'll do everything we can to keep her comfortable and maintain her quality of life for as long as possible." Scylla lay in her hospital bed, numb with shock and disbelief. Just hours ago, she had been on top of the world, full of hopes and dreams for the future. Now that future had been ripped away, replaced by a bleak and uncertain path. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of her situation sank in. She was going to die, slowly and painfully, her mind and body wasting away until there was nothing left. It was a fate worse than death, a cruel twist of fate that she couldn't begin to comprehend. As her family gathered around her, their faces etched with grief and despair, Scylla couldn't help but feel a sense of hopelessness wash over her. How could she face this? How could she find the strength to keep going, knowing what lay ahead? But even in the depths of her despair, a small spark of determination flickered to life in Scylla's heart. She wasn't ready to give up, not yet. If this was to be her fate, she would face it with courage and grace, making the most of every moment she had left. With a shaky breath, Scylla reached out and took her mother's hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm not going to let this beat me," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "I'm going to fight with everything I have." And so, as the sun set over the Versian capital, casting long shadows across the hospital room, Scylla steeled herself for the battle ahead. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to go down without a fight. In the days following Scylla's devastating diagnosis, the Galactic Medical Center became a hive of activity. Doctors and researchers from across the galaxy converged on the facility, each determined to find a cure for the rare and incurable disease that threatened Scylla's life. Dr. Tander Vox, the lead physician on Scylla's case, worked tirelessly, poring over medical journals and consulting with experts in every field. He refused to accept that there was no hope, no chance of saving his patient's life. "We have to keep trying," he insisted, his voice raw with exhaustion as he addressed his team. "Scylla is counting on us. We can't let her down." But as the days turned into weeks, the prognosis only grew bleaker. Every treatment they tried, every experimental drug they administered, seemed to have no effect on the relentless march of the disease. Scylla watched from her hospital bed, her once vibrant emerald eyes dulled by pain and fatigue. She could see the toll the search for a cure was taking on her doctors, the way their shoulders slumped and their faces grew haggard with each passing day. "You're doing everything you can," she reassured them, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know that, and I'm grateful, truly." Dr. Vox shook his head, his expression grim. "It's not enough. We have to do more. We have to find a way." But as much as Scylla appreciated their efforts, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of despair. With each failed treatment, each disappointing test result, she felt her hope slipping away, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. She thought of all the things she had wanted to do with her life, all the dreams she had yet to fulfill. She had always imagined herself making a difference in the world, leaving a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. Now, faced with the prospect of her own mortality, those dreams seemed like cruel mockeries. taunting her with visions of a future she would never see. Sila's family remained by her side throughout her ordeal, their love and support unwavering. Her mother spent long hours at her bedside, reading to her from her favorite books and reminiscing about happier times. "Remember when you were little and you used to chase fireflies in the garden?" her mother asked, a wistful smile on her face. "You were so determined to catch them, to hold their light in your hands." Sila nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I remember. I always believed that if I could just catch one, I could make a wish and it would come true." Her mother reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Sila's forehead, her touch gentle and comforting. "You always had such a vivid imagination, such a boundless sense of possibility. That's what I love most about you, Sila. Your spirit, your courage." Sila felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes and she blinked them away, not wanting to let her mother see her pain. "I don't feel very courageous right now," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel scared and angry and so very tired." Her mother gathered her into her arms, holding her close as she rocked her gently back and forth. "It's okay to be scared, my love. It's okay to be angry, but never forget it that you are strong, stronger than you know. You will get through this, no matter what happens." Sila clung to her mother, drawing strength from her presence, her unwavering love. She knew that her family would be there for her, no matter what the future held. As the weeks passed, Sila's condition continued to deteriorate. She grew weaker and weaker, her body ravaged by the relentless progression of the disease. Even the simplest tasks, like sitting up in bed or holding a conversation, became increasingly difficult. Dr. Vox and his team redoubled their efforts, working around the clock to find a cure. They tried everything they could think of, from cutting-edge gene therapies to ancient alien remedies, but nothing seemed to make a difference. Finally, after months of fruitless searching, Dr. Vox called a meeting with Sila and her family. His face was drawn and haggard, his eyes haunted by the weight of what he had to say. "I'm so sorry," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We've tried everything, explored every possible avenue, but the truth is, there is no cure. The disease is too advanced, too aggressive." Sila's mother let out a choked sob, her hand flying to her mouth. "What are you saying, doctor? What does this mean for Sila?" Dr. Vox took a deep breath, steeling himself for the words he knew he had to say. "It means that we have to start thinking about other options, ways to manage Sila's pain and symptoms, to make her as comfortable as possible." Sila felt a cold, sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. She knew what he was suggesting, even before he said the words. "You mean euthanasia?" she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "You're saying I should consider ending my life?" Dr. Vox nodded, his expression somber. "I know it's not an easy thing to hear, Sila, but given the progression of your disease, the amount of pain and suffering you're likely to endure, it may be the most humane option." Sila's father, who had been silent throughout the meeting, suddenly spoke up, his voice trembling with anger and grief. "Number, absolutely not. We're not giving up on our daughter, not like this." Dr. Vox held up his hand, his expression sympathetic. "I understand your feelings, Mr. Gore, but the reality is there is no cure. And the longer we wait, the more Sila will suffer. It's a decision that only she can make, but I urge you to consider it carefully." Sila sat in silence, her mind reeling with the implications of what Dr. Vox was suggesting. The idea of ending her own life, of choosing to die before her time, was almost too much to bear. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the reality of her situation. She knew that her disease was progressing rapidly, that each day brought new pain and new challenges. The thought of lingering on, of slowly wasting away until there was nothing left of her, it was a fate worse than death. "I need time to think," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "To process all of this. Can you give me that, doctor? Just a little more time?" Dr. Vox nodded, his expression understanding. "Of course, Sila. Take all the time you need. We'll be here to support you, whatever you decide." As Sila lay in her hospital bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, she couldn't help but feel a sense of despair washing over her. The future that had once seemed so bright, so full of possibility, now felt like a dark and empty void. She thought of all the things she had wanted to do, all the experiences she had dreamed of having. Falling in love, starting a family, exploring the wonders of the universe. All of it seemed like a cruel joke now, a taunting reminder of everything she would never have. But even in the depths of her despair, Scylla couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something worth fighting for. Some reason to keep going. She just had to find it, to hold on to it with everything she had. As she drifted off to sleep, her mind filled with swirling thoughts and emotions, Scylla made a silent vow to herself. She would not let this disease define her, would not let it rob her of the time she had left. She would live, truly live, for as long as she could. And when the time came to make a decision about her future, she would face it with the same courage and determination that had always been her strength. For now, that was enough. It had to be. In the days following her meeting with Dr. Vox, Scylla found herself sinking deeper into despair. The weight of her diagnosis, the knowledge that her time was running out, seemed to press down on her like a physical burden, crushing the air from her lungs and the hope from her heart. She spent long hours staring out of the window of her hospital room, watching the world go by without her. The bustling streets of the Verxian capital, once so full of life and energy, now seemed dull and distant, a reminder of everything she was losing. Scylla's family did their best to lift her spirits, visiting her every day and bringing her small gifts and tokens of their love. But even their presence couldn't chase away the darkness that had settled over her, the sense of hopelessness that threatened to consume her. It was during one of these visits that Scylla first noticed him, a tall, handsome human man with chiseled features and a confident stride, walking through the halls of the Galactic Medical Center as if he owned the place. Scylla watched him from the corner of her eye, intrigued despite herself. Humans were a rare sight on Verxia, and she had never seen one up close before. There was something about him, a sense of purpose and determination, that drew her in. Over the next few days, Scylla found herself looking forward to the human's visits. She learned that his name was Captain Emmett Reynolds, a renowned explorer and diplomat from Earth. He had a reputation for being brave and compassionate, always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. Scylla couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity every time she saw him. What was he doing here, in a hospital so far from his home world? What kind of adventures had he been on? What kind of stories could he tell? One day, as Emmett passed by her room on his way to visit another patient, Scylla found herself calling out to him before she could stop herself. "Excuse me, Captain Reynolds?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you had a moment to chat." Emmett turned to look at her, his blue eyes sparkling with warmth and curiosity. "Of course," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I always have time for a beautiful woman." Scylla felt a blush creeping up her neck at his words, and she ducked her head, suddenly shy. "I'm Scylla," she said, gesturing for him to come in. "I've been watching you these past few days." "I hope that doesn't sound too creepy," Emmett chuckled, taking a seat beside her bed. "Not at all. I'm flattered, actually. It's not every day a guy like me gets noticed by a stunning alien woman." Scylla felt a smile tugging at her own lips, the first real smile she had felt in weeks. There was something about Emmett's easy charm, his playful banter, that made her feel lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. They talked for hours that first day, swapping the stories and jokes like old friends. Emmett told her about his adventures on distant planets, the strange and wonderful creatures he had encountered, the close calls and narrow escapes. Scylla found herself hanging on his every word, her eyes wide with wonder and excitement. For a moment, she could almost forget about her illness, about the ticking clock that hung over her head. As the days passed, Emmett's visits became more frequent, and Scylla found herself looking forward to them more and more. He brought a spark of life into her dull, monotonous existence, a reminder that there was still beauty and joy to be found in the world. They talked about everything and nothing, from the latest gossip on the space station to the meaning of life itself. Emmett had a way of making even the most mundane topics seem fascinating, his quick wit and easy charm drawing Scylla out of her shell. But even as they grew closer, Scylla couldn't shake the sense that there was something deeper growing between them. It was in the way Emmett's eyes lingered on hers, the way his touch sent shivers down her spine. She felt drawn to him in a way she had never experienced before, like two souls recognizing each other across the vastness of space and time. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of her hospital room, Scylla found herself opening up to Emmett in a way she never had before. "Emmett," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you believe in fate? In the idea that some things are just meant to be?" Emmett looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I've never really thought about it before, but being here with you, talking to you, it feels right somehow, like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Scylla felt a warmth spreading through her chest at his words, a sense of connection that went beyond mere friendship. She reached out and took his hand, marveling at the way their fingers intertwined, like two pieces of a puzzle fitting perfectly together. I feel it too," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Like we were meant to find each other, even if it's just for a little while." Emmett squeezed her hand, his touch warm and comforting. "I'm here for you, Scylla. No matter what happens, I'll be by your side." They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand, their hearts beating in sync. Scylla knew that there were still so many uncertainties ahead, so many challenges to face. But in that moment, with Emmett by her side, she felt a flicker of hope burning in her chest, a sense that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. As the days turned into weeks, Scylla and Emmett grew even closer, their bond deepening with every shared laugh, every heartfelt conversation. They talked about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Emmett told her about his childhood on Earth, the way he had always felt like an outsider, searching for his place in the universe. Scylla shared her own struggles, the weight of her family's expectations, the pressure to be perfect in every way. Through it all, they found solace in each other, a sense of understanding and acceptance that they had never known before. It was like they had been waiting their whole lives to find each other, two kindred spirits adrift in the vastness of space. But even as their connection grew stronger, Scylla couldn't bring herself to tell Emmett about her illness, about the ticking clock that hung over her head. She didn't want to burden him with her pain, didn't want to see the pity in his eyes when he looked at her. So she kept her secret close to her heart, cherishing every moment they had together, knowing that each one was precious and fleeting. And as the stars continued to shine down on the Galactic Medical Center, two souls found each other in the darkness, their hearts intertwined in a bond that even death itself could not break. As the days turned into weeks, Scylla felt the weight of her impending fate pressing down on her more heavily than ever. Despite the joy and comfort she found in Emmett's presence, she couldn't shake the knowledge that her time was running out, that each moment they shared was one step closer to the end. She knew that she had to tell him the truth, had to let him know about her illness and the decision she had made. But every time she tried to broach the subject, the words stuck in her throat, her courage failing her at the last moment. It wasn't until one quiet evening, as they sat together in the peaceful solitude of the hospital gardens, that Scylla finally found the strength to speak her truth. "Emmett," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion, "there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." Emmett looked at her, his blue eyes filled with concern and tenderness. "You can tell me anything, Scylla." "You know that?" Scylla took a deep breath, steeling herself for the words she knew she had to say. "I'm dying, Emmett. I have a rare genetic disorder, one that has no cure. The doctors have given me just a few more weeks to live." Emmett's eyes widened in shock, his face draining of color. "What? Scylla, why didn't you tell me sooner? I could have done something, found a way to help you." Scylla shook her head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "There's nothing anyone can do, Emmett. Believe me, I've tried everything, but this is my fate, and I've made my peace with it." Emmett reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and comforting. "I'm so sorry, Scylla. I can't even imagine what you must be going through, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. I'll be by your side until the very end." Scylla felt tears welling up in her eyes, a lump forming in her throat. She had never expected to find someone like Emmett, someone who could see past her illness, love her for who she truly was. It was a gift she had never dared to hope for, a blessing she knew she didn't deserve. "Thank you, Emmett," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You have no idea how much that means to me. But there's something else I need to ask you. Something that might sound a little crazy. Emmett raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Crazier than falling in love with a dying alien girl? Try me. Scylla took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I want to experience the human method of reproduction, Emmett. I want to feel that connection, that intimacy just once before I die. And I want it to be with you. Emmett's eyes widened in surprise, his mouth falling open slightly. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words, his mind racing to process what she had just said. But then slowly, a smile spread across his face, a look of pure love and understanding shining in his eyes. Scylla, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, I would be honored to share that experience with you, to give you that gift, that memory to carry with you into whatever comes next. Scylla felt a wave of relief wash over her, a sense of peace and acceptance that she had never known before. She leaned in and pressed her forehead against Emmett's, their breath mingling in the cool night air. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her own heart. Thank you for being here, for loving me, for everything. Emmett cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. I will always love you, Scylla, in this life and the next, no matter what happens. You are my soulmate, my other half. And nothing, not even death itself, can change that. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other close, their hearts beating in sync. And as the stars twinkled overhead, Scylla felt a sense of peace wash over her, a sense of acceptance and surrender that she had never known before. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations and anticipation. Scylla and Emmett spent every waking moment together, savoring each precious second they had left. They talked about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Emmett told her about the life he had always imagined for himself, the family he had always wanted to have. Scylla shared her own visions of the future, the adventures she had always dreamed of going on. And through it all, they planned for the moment they both knew was coming, the moment when they would finally consummate their love in the most intimate way possible. When the day finally arrived, Scylla felt a sense of nervous excitement thrumming through her veins. She had never been with anyone before, had never even considered the possibility of physical intimacy. But as Emmett led her to the private room they had prepared, his hand warm and steady in hers, she felt a sense of rightness, a sense of inevitability that she couldn't explain. They took their time, exploring each other's bodies with gentle touches and reverent kisses. Emmett was patient and attentive, his every move designed to make Scylla feel cherished and adored. And as they finally came together, their bodies moving in perfect harmony, Scylla felt a sense of completeness wash over her, a sense of unity and connection that she had never known before. It was like the universe itself was singing, like the stars were aligning in perfect synchronicity. And in that moment, Scylla knew that she had found her purpose, her reason for being. She clung to Emmett, her fingers digging into his back, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. And as the waves of pleasure crashed over her, as the power of their union consumed her entirely, she felt a sense of peace wash over her, a sense of acceptance and surrender that she had never known before. Afterward, as they lay together in the afterglow, their bodies intertwined and their hearts beating as one, Scylla felt a sense of contentment that she had never experienced before. She knew that her time was running out, that the end was drawing ever closer, but in that moment, wrapped in Emmett's arms and surrounded by his love, she felt a sense of peace and acceptance that she had never known before. Thank you, she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. Thank you for giving me this gift, for making my last wish come true. Emmett pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, his eyes shining with unshed tears. It was my honor, Scylla, my privilege. You have given me so much more than I could ever repay. They held each other close, savoring the warmth and comfort of each other's presence. And as the stars continued to shine down on them, as the universe itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, Scylla knew that she had found something rare and precious, something that would stay with her forever, no matter what the future held. The morning sun cast a pale, sickly light through the windows of Scylla's hospital room, illuminating the worry and fear etched on Emmett's face as he sat by her bedside. Just a few days after their intimate moment, Scylla's condition had taken a sudden and alarming turn for the worse. Emmett had been jolted awake in the early hours of the morning by the sound of Scylla's labored breathing, her body shaking with violent tremors. He had immediately called for the doctors, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched them rush into the room, their faces grim and focused. "Her vitals are dropping rapidly," one of the nurses said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to get her to the operating room now." Emmett felt a cold sense of dread wash over him as he watched them wheel Scylla away, her silver skin pale and clammy, her dark hair matted with sweat. He wanted to go with her, to hold her hand and tell her that everything would be all right. But the doctors had insisted that he stay behind. "We'll do everything we can, doctor." Vox had promised, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "But you need to prepare yourself for the worst." Now, as Emmett sat in the waiting room, his head in his hands, he felt like he was being torn apart from the inside out. The thought of losing Scylla, of having to go on without her by his side, was too much to bear. He thought back to the moment they had first met, the spark of connection that had passed between them like an electric current. He remembered the way her eyes had sparkled when she laughed, the way her smile had lit up the room like a supernova. He remembered the way she had felt in his arms, the softness of her skin, the warmth of her breath against his neck. He remembered the way she had looked at him like he was the only thing in the universe that mattered. "Please," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Please don't take her away from me. I can't lose her. Not now, not like this." The hours ticked by with agonizing slowness, each minute feeling like an eternity. Emmett paced the waiting room, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios, his heart aching with the thought of losing the woman he loved. Scylla's family arrived shortly after, their faces etched with worry and fear. They gathered around Emmett, offering words of comfort and support, their presence a balm to his battered soul. "She's a fighter," Scylla's mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. "She's always been so strong, so brave. If anyone can make it through this, it's her." Emmett nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He knew that Scylla was a warrior, that she had faced countless challenges and obstacles in her life. But this was different. This was a battle that even she might not be able to win. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Vox emerged from the operating room, his face drawn and haggard. Emmett leaped to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest, his breath caught in his throat. "She made it through the surgery," Dr. Vox said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "But her condition is still critical. The next few hours will be crucial in determining her outcome." Emmett felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by a renewed sense of fear. He knew that Scylla was not out of the woods yet, that there were still so many uncertainties ahead. "Can I see her?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Vox hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "She's in the ICU, but you can sit with her for a little while. Just be prepared. She's hooked up to a lot of machines and monitors." Emmett followed the doctor down the sterile white hallway, his heart hammering in his chest. When they reached Scylla's room, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The sight of her lying there, her body still and pale, nearly brought him to his knees. She was surrounded by a tangle of wires and tubes, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of the ventilator. Emmett pulled a chair up to her bedside, taking her hand in his. It felt small and fragile, like a bird's wing, and he marveled at the contrast between her delicate fingers and the strength he knew lay within her. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You're going to make it through this, you hear me? You're the strongest person I know, and I love you more than anything in this universe." He talked to her for hours, telling her stories of their time together, reminding her of the dreams they had whispered to each other in the dark. He played her favorite music, read to her from her favorite books, and poured every ounce of his love and devotion into her still form. As the hours turned into days, Emmett refused to leave her side. He slept in the chair by her bed, ate the meals the nurses brought him, and never once let go of her hand. And slowly, miraculously, Scylla began to respond. Her vital signs improved, her brain activity increased, and the doctors began to express cautious optimism about her prognosis. Emmett felt like he was walking on air, his heart soaring with hope and joy. He knew that there was still a long road ahead, that Scylla's recovery would be slow and difficult, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. When Scylla finally opened her eyes, blinking in the soft light of the hospital room, Emmett felt like he was seeing the universe being born anew. Her emerald gaze locked with his, and he saw the love and gratitude shining there, brighter than any star. "You're here," she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. "You never left me." Emmett felt tears streaming down his face, his heart bursting with joy and relief. "I will never leave you, Scylla. Not in this life or the next. You are my everything, my reason for being." Over the next few weeks, Scylla's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Her strength returned, her body healing in ways that defied medical explanation. The doctors were baffled, unable to explain how a woman who had been so close to death could have made such a remarkable turnaround. They ran test after test, searching for some scientific explanation, but in the end, they were forced to admit that there were some things that science simply could not explain. But Emmett knew the truth. He knew that it was the power of their love, the unbreakable bond they shared, that had brought Scylla back from the brink. He remembered the moment she had first told him about her illness, the fear and despair that had threatened to consume him. But even then, even in the darkest of moments, he had known that their love was stronger than any disease, any obstacle that the universe could throw at them. And as he watched Scylla grow stronger each day, her laughter ringing through the hospital halls, her smile brighter than the sun, he knew that he had been right. For in the end, it was not medicine or science that had saved Scylla's life. It was the power of human love, the unbreakable bond between two souls that refused to be torn apart. And as they walked out of the hospital hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Emmett and Scylla knew that they had found something rare and precious, something that would last forever. Their love had conquered death itself, and nothing in the universe could ever tear them apart. As Scylla's recovery progressed, the Galactic Medical Center buzzed with excitement and curiosity. The news of her miraculous turnaround had spread like wildfire, and doctors and researchers from across the galaxy clamored to learn more about the mysterious power of human love. Emmett and Scylla found themselves at the center of a media frenzy. Their story splashed across every news outlet and social media platform. They were hailed as a symbol of hope and unity, a shining example of the power of love to conquer even the most insurmountable odds. But amidst all the chaos and attention, Emmett and Scylla remained focused on their ultimate goal, finding a cure for Scylla's rare genetic disorder. They worked closely with Dr. Volks and his team, poring over the latest research in medical journals. And as they delved deeper into the science behind Scylla's recovery, they made a startling discovery. "It's the hormones," Dr. Volks explained, his eyes wide with excitement. "The unique hormones released during human male reproduction seem to have a profound effect on Virxian physiology. They stimulate the body's natural healing processes, boosting the immune system and promoting cellular regeneration." Emmett and Scylla exchanged a look of wonder and disbelief. Could it really be that simple? Could the key to curing Scylla's illness have been within them all along? They threw themselves into the research with renewed vigor, working tirelessly to develop a treatment based on their groundbreaking discovery. They faced skepticism and opposition from some members of the medical community who were hesitant to embrace such an unconventional approach. But Emmett and Scylla refused to be deterred. They knew that they were on the cusp of something truly remarkable, something that could change the lives of countless individuals across the galaxy. And as they worked side by side, their love for each other only grew stronger. They found joy in the simple moments, in the quiet conversations and shared laughter that filled their days. Scylla marveled at Emmett's unwavering dedication and support, at the way he never once wavered in his belief in her. And Emmett was in awe of Scylla's strength and resilience, at the way she faced each challenge with grace and determination. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a testament to the power of love and the indomitable human spirit. And finally, after months of hard work and countless setbacks, they had a breakthrough. They developed a treatment that not only halted the progression of Scylla's disease, but actually reversed its effects. The first time Scylla received the treatment, Emmett held her hand tightly, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. They watched in awe as the silver pigment returned to her skin and as the light rekindled in her emerald eyes. And when the treatment was finished, when Scylla took her first steps without the aid of a wheelchair or a cane, Emmett swept her into his arms, tears of joy streaming down his face. "You did it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You beat this thing, Scylla. You're a miracle." Scylla laughed, her heart bursting with happiness and love. "We did it, Emmett, together. You never gave up on me, not for a single moment." News of Scylla's cure spread like wildfire, and soon the Galactic Medical Center was flooded with requests for the treatment. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy came to seek the miraculous power of human love, to experience for themselves the healing touch that had brought Scylla back from the brink of death. And as Emmett and Scylla watched the treatment work its magic on patient after patient, they knew that they had found their true calling. They had discovered a way to harness the power of love, to use it as a force for good in the universe. But even amidst the chaos and excitement of their new life, Emmett and Scylla never forgot the special moments they shared, the quiet intimacy that had brought them together in the first place. They would often steal away to the hospital gardens, to the same bench where they had first confessed their love for each other. They would sit hand in hand, gazing up at the stars, marveling at the twists and turns that had brought them to this moment. "You know, I never thought I'd say this," Scylla said one evening, a mischievous glint in her eye. "But I'm actually grateful for my illness. If it hadn't been for that, I never would have met you." Emmett chuckled, pulling her close and pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Well, I'm grateful for your last wish. If it hadn't been for that, I might never have discovered my true calling as an intergalactic love doctor." Scylla laughed, swatting him playfully on the arm. "Is that what you're calling yourself now, Dr. Love?" "Hey, it has a nice ring to it," Emmett grinned, waggling his eyebrows suggestively. "And besides, I've got the credentials to back it up." They dissolved into laughter, their hearts light and free. And as they sat there basking in the warmth of each other's presence, they knew that they had found something truly special, something that would last a lifetime. Scylla's recovery and the development of the groundbreaking treatment based on human hormones sent shockwaves through the medical community and society as a whole. Aliens from all walks of life marveled at the incredible resilience and strength of the human spirit, at the way Emmett and Scylla had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Many began to see humans in a new light, as a species capable of great compassion, determination, and love. They were in awe of the way Emmett had stood by Scylla's side through every challenge, never once losing faith in her or their love. And as the treatment continued to work its miracles, as more and more patients were cured of their once incurable illnesses, the galaxy began to see the true potential of human-alien cooperation. They saw how much could be accomplished when two species worked together in harmony, driven by a shared goal and a common purpose. For Emmett and Scylla, the greatest reward was the knowledge that they had made a difference, that they had used their love to bring hope and healing to countless lives across the stars. And as they looked to the future, to the many adventures and challenges that lay ahead, they knew that they would face them all together, hand in hand, heart to heart. For in the end, it was not the destination that mattered, but the journey itself, and the love that had guided them every step of the way. And so, as the twin sons of Verxia set on another perfect day, Emmett and Scylla held each other close, their hearts full of gratitude and joy, ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them next. Together, they had found their happily ever after, and nothing in the galaxy could ever take that away from them.